So for this sewing project, your first thing you're going to need is a pattern, and I'll explain that in the next part of the video. I'm just going to go over the materials right now. You're going to need some coordinating cotton fabrics, 100% cotton. You can use fleece or flannel or something like that, but I think it would get really uncomfortable. My suggestion is cotton. I'm going with a black back, just a simple back, because it's not going to be reversible, so I'm just going to have a solid color on the back and one of these printed colors on the front. So you're also going to need some kind of elastic cording. My suggestion is this thin cord. I think you can get it a little thicker than this, but you don't want it to be too thick. If you're like me, I have tiny ears, so they might not fit over it well. It might not be comfortable. This is, for me, I think the most comfortable to use. You're also going to need a sewing machine. You're going to need paper scissors. You're going to need fabric scissors, and I always have my handy dandy little thread scissors. You're going to need coordinating fabrics and an iron. So here we go. Okay. So the first step to making this face mask that I used was to find a pattern. The only problem with this pattern is that I know it's going to be really small for my face. I just have a really big head. You know, I'm kind of chubby, so I know that by the time I get this on, it's not going to work for me. So I've got some extra paper here, and what I'm going to do is, using this pattern, I'm going to trace it and make it a little bigger. I also am not a big fan of patterns that tell you to cut a seam allowance. When you're new to sewing, you don't understand what that seam allowance is. So my suggestion is to try to kind of stay away from patterns like that, or at least trace your seam allowance and then cut it out, because it can get really tricky, especially if it's some odd shaped things. This is pretty simple, but you know. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully be able to see this. If not, you'll see me in fast motion trace it with ink so I can lay it over the top of the other one. And I will give you a link to this pattern so that you can go and download it and copy it if you choose to use it. It's a really great pattern. It's really easy, but like I said, if you need to make it bigger, you can do that on your own. So anyway. Okay, so you see, just mainly for my own reference and for yours, if you're, for watching the video, I traced the original size and then I kind of expanded on it, and that's going to have a bit of a seam allowance, so you're going to see it get smaller. You just really have to eyeball this and go by, work with it a little bit, try it out using paper pieces, maybe tape them together and see how the mask would fit you once it's sewn. It takes a little experimentation, but it's not super hard. This is actually a really easy pattern. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this piece out. Now, as you can see, I've cut out 2 pieces for the back, and I've cut out 2 pieces for the front, the side that'll be showing when you're wearing the mask. And if you noticed in the video, I traced the pattern with chalk. It's a small pattern. I didn't really think I needed to pin it. I didn't want to pin it to pinch things up. It's actually sometimes messier to pin than not. But I also added 2 inches on this outside piece, and that is going to be for the fold that we're going to make to put the casing for the elastic. Okay. So anyway, another thing is is that I have not cut out my elastic cording yet, because this is going to be the very first one I'm making that you guys see, and I'm not sure how much I'll need. I'm going to wait until I have the whole thing completed, and I can add the elastic the very last thing. It doesn't have to be done during the sewing process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get started with the sewing process, and so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use a light colored thread that'll show up better on these dark fabrics. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to put right sides facing together. And the only thing that we're going to sew is we're going to sew down this piece right here, leaving a little bit of a seam allowance. You want a nice seam allowance, you don't want it to come apart. And I'm going to do that on this one, and I'm going to do that on the back pieces, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so you can see I've sewn down the curved edge, what would be the front, nose, and mouth piece of each one. Now what I want to do is I'm going to open up each piece, and it's going to be curved. We're not going to worry with this one. We're not going to do the clipping or any of that like we would normally do. You could press it. I feel like, I don't know, that might be really difficult to do, but if you're more comfortable with pressing that seam open, you can do that. I'm not going to try it for this video. I'm going to let you guys decide what you're going to do. So you're going to put right sides facing together. You want to line up those center seams, and you could definitely pin for this, but I'm not going to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all up the top and all down the bottom, and I'm going to leave these sides open. We want these ends open. We need them for turning, and we need them to make the casing. You can see I've sewn down both sides, both the top and the bottom. Now I do want to clip these curves on this part, just because I want it to lay nice and neat after I've turned everything. And you can see what I did was with the seams, with the center seams, when I got to those, I just laid them facing opposite ways on both ends. And that way they lay flat and they're not in the way when you're wearing the mask. So I'm going to clip these corners just a little bit. You don't clip through the seam if you're not familiar with this. When you do a curved edge, if you need to press it, need it to lay nice and flat, you can clip it close to the seam but not on the seam. And you just do that on the most curved part of the material, and then it should lay flat. You don't need to trim it or anything like that. You just need to clip it a little bit. So I clipped the seam just a little bit at the curved edges, and you can see right above the center point I clipped that off so that it doesn't bunch up and it's not uncomfortable. So now I'm going to turn this, and then I'll show you the next step. So now that I've got this turned, my next step is going to be to make sure that the seams are laying flat, and I'm going to press it. Okay, so we've pressed down these seams and we got that nice and neat, and this is exactly what you want to happen from where you connected these two. You want that to fold over so there's no raw edges. And now I'm just going to do about, I guess about 1/3 of an inch fold over so that we get rid of those raw edges. Now you can zigzag or serge the raw edge of this, and you can just fold it over without doing that fold over, and it'd be less bulk on your face. But I don't have a serger, and I'm not gonna do the zigzag stitch, so I'm just gonna do it this way. So we're gonna fold this over like this, And you just want to cover the raw edge of the back fabric. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my machine and I'm going to sew right along the edge of this where I folded it over. You want to leave a casing to put the elastic in. So I'm going to do that and then we'll put the elastic on and we'll be done. Okay, so to put the elastic in, all you really need to do is feed it through and tie it in a nice little knot. Now you could put it through the ends through and sew it through each end, but it makes it kind of tricky and difficult. You know, it's not going to be an easy task. So I'm going to do it this way and just make sure you got a good knot in there. I think this kind of knot is going to be the knot I'm going for. I've got fat little fingers, so it's going to take me some effort here. Just pull that knot nice and tight, and then you want to just pull it in there so that you kind of trying to hide the knot, and she don't want to go in there. Fussy little thing. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. So there you have it, folks. You can see the pictures at the beginning and the end of the video to see how it looks. It's a perfect fit. I'm really happy with it, and I am really glad that I went on and changed the size for myself, or else this thing would no way have fit me. It probably would have ended up being just big enough to fit my 14-month-old granddaughter. So anyway, that's it. If you know a handy guy or gal in your life that uses a lot of these face masks, they are a lot of fun to make and wear, and so you'll be seeing them in some of my newer videos that'll be coming up, which will be a lot of woodworking videos and things like that too. So peace, y'all. Hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.